Well, tell me about the vision that he had in his what? He was in his 20s and decided to start this restaurant with a couple of partners. Where did where did they get the idea in the first place?
So my grandfather served in the military twice on active duty. He was drafted in World War II and served in the Pacific. And while he was there in Guam, he met one of his future partners, Warren Gormley, while he was there. And then later he got to use the GI Bill to go to college, and he became graduated as an officer in the Air Force Reserve and ended up serving in the Korean War in Japan, running a commissary that served 10,000 soldiers, sailors, and airmen every day. So learned about food production in a way he wouldn't have otherwise chosen. When he would tell the story about how the concept of the drive-in came to him, he was sitting in a 1950 style diner at the bar. Behind the bar, a server opened a refrigerator. It was full of hamburger patties, and he asked the guy, "Wow, that's a lot of hamburger patties. Can you serve all those before they go bad?" And the guy said, "Oh, I serve all of those and a refrigerator twice as big, twice as full every single day." And my grandfather would tell the story, either he was struck by lightning or a light bulb went off, there's light involved, and it was hamburgers. Hamburgers were going to be the business he was going to start. And if he could make 5 cents on every hamburger, it would be a really successful business. And he reached out to his old Navy buddy, Warren, who was living in Seattle, and was excited about this hamburger concept and wanting to start a hamburger restaurant together with him. And Warren's wife worked for the first tenured professor of dentistry at University of Washington, and she told him about it. And he had heard at his church from someone else about the McDonald brothers starting in California, and he thought that was a really interesting idea. They should check that out. So Warren and my grandfather actually went down to California and learned about what the McDonald brothers were doing. Quick service fast food, those terms didn't exist. They loved it. They loved how fast it was. They loved how they could use high quality ingredients, keep prices low. There was nothing like that in Seattle. They wanted to bring that back to Seattle. So that's where the idea came from. And they, through a bunch of, again, really amazing circumstances, were able to pull it off. And the first Dick's Drive-In location opened in January of 1954.
Wow. In the early days, it sounds like money was pretty tight. And actually, the first restaurant was built by a contractor who took, I guess, a promise of future earnings. Is that right? For his role in building the restaurant?
Yeah, and it was one of those crazy circumstances I mentioned. So when they came back to Seattle, they had this whole business plan. They loved what the McDonald brothers were doing. They wanted to bring that back to Seattle and sell hamburgers for 19 cents. The dentist was an investor. He put in 5,000. They all had to put in 5,000. That was their pot of money, $15,000. They found a landlord who would lease them property. My grandfather was doing commercial real estate at the time, so he did an analysis and found all the best spots, found a landlord who would lease to them, but would not build the building because it was this crazy new design of a kitchen. Nobody was going to want this. Wasn't going to work. He didn't want to be left with this custom building. Nobody was going to operate. So he wouldn't build the building for them. They tried to borrow money from the banks. The banks were like, "This is 19 cents. People are going out of business selling it for 35 cents. Are you kidding?" And also, this whole people standing outside in line, that might work in California. It's never going to work in a place where it rains all the time. So the banks wouldn't loan them any money. And my grandfather found a guy who had inherited his father's construction business in Alaska, was in Seattle looking for jobs in the winter. And my grandfather, who could talk anyone into anything, convinced this guy that he promised he could just get this building built. He promised he'd pay him as soon as they were open. And they had a handshake and an IOU. There was no collateral, nothing. The guy did it and it worked. It was great. Customers loved it. They loved how fast it was, how good the food was, how low the prices were. And it was love at first bite, as we say. And it was great because they had all sorts of people they had to pay, including the contractor, right after they opened. So,
It's hard to imagine America before the era of fast food. And you mentioned the McDonald brothers. I mean, that goes so far back that, when McDonald's was actually owned by McDonald's before they sold to Ray Kroc and became this global juggernaut. What an interesting start. And so I'd love to know, Jasmine, as they started to grow the company, what was the key to the success of this thing? And before we get into that, I have to tell you, I mean, the idea that who's going to line up. I was at the Wallingford location a number of years ago, and I'm in line, and an SUV pulls up, and a woman gets out, and she looked very familiar, and she got behind me in line, and I was like, "Is that who I think it is?" And so I got up the nerve, and I said, "Excuse me, "Are you Melinda?" And she said, "Yes." I said, "Oh my gosh." I said, "I'm such a fan of the work that you and your husband are doing at the foundation. And I just wanted to say thank you for that." And she said, "Well, it's our pleasure." And it was Melinda Gates who had just gotten out of an SUV full of security guards and was standing in line at Dick's. I'm guessing that's not an uncommon occurrence at Dick's, right?
We have all sorts of celebrities that come out to visit us, and it's one of the things that makes the drive-in so special for me in particular is for everybody. It's for the conveners in our part. I mean, it's a convener, right? We everyone wants to go to Dick's. Everyone wants to get a burger, fry, and a shake, and it doesn't matter if you're an elite athlete, a famous philanthropist, or the local plumber, right? You have beater trucks next to fancy Ferraris in the parking lot. You can be a high school student, a senior citizen. It's something that everybody enjoys here. And it's a really cool thing to be a part of in
Yeah.
that sense.
You told me when we spoke a few weeks ago that the business model really was high quality ingredients, fast service for an affordable price. How was that able, as you were saying, that some restaurants were going out of business selling burgers for more than that? How did Dick and his partners make it in those early years?
So first it was unique, right? It was unique that we could have high quality ingredients, instant service, and low prices. Quick service started to become more common, but we maintained those core elements throughout the process. We got started earlier, so we optimized our processes sooner. We also built our kitchens in a little bit of a different way in that we maintain the fishbowl, what we call it. So our kitchens are on display. You can see in our kitchen. So the cleanliness and quality in our kitchens, you can see all of our equipment. You can see our employees working, training, washing hands, sanitizing things, right? We have a very strong commitment to cleanliness and safety in our kitchens. And that's on display for our customers, right? So we're extremely transparent in our core values that the core value that ties back to is integrity. And it's something that built trust with our customers from the beginning. So that consistency, reliability, quality in a clean environment. And then we invested in our employees. So the original founders always, from the beginning, paid the best wages and benefits in the industry and continue to build on that as we continue to grow and we're more successful and they could do more for their employees. And then those employees take better care of our customers. And that's a virtuous cycle, as my grandfather would say. And then also those employees, when they go on to do other things in their lives, as we expect many of them will do, and we're very proud of that, they're amazing brand ambassadors for us and speak highly of our restaurants and what it was like to work there. And that also helps bring customers back. And they bring their children back to work for us and their children back to eat with us. And so, again, virtuous cycle. And over time, as you're able to do both of those things, and the original partners were, they invested in their communities as well in small ways and then larger ways over time, because if our community is thriving, our business would thrive. And so we intended to be here a very long time. This was not something that they did kind of as a short-term business venture. And then especially when my family bought out the other two partners and that deal closed in 1991, we really became a family business and then had a very long perspective, right? So we're thinking about wanting to keep the business in the family for another 7 generations. That would be 10 generations in total at a minimum as a start. And so that gives you a really long term perspective and can lead to different choices when operating a business.
Yeah, it sounds like and his partners from the beginning didn't see the employees just as a commodity, but really as an integral part of the operation. That if they took care of their employees, there was also wasn't there a scholarship program as well for employees?
We have a scholarship program now that is very robust.
Hmm.
In the beginning, it started with them helping as much as they could those employees that were working with them or being shift managers with them. And eventually, we were able to, as we continue to have success, expand that out. And today, all of our employees who work with us at least 20 hours a week and have passed their first skills test have access to our scholarship program.